Good evening. Good evening. On behalf of the Hopkinton Women's Club, welcome to the 30th night. My name is Kathy Hebden, and I'll be the program. The Hopkinton Women's Club was founded in 1920 when women were gaining the right to vote. Each year, with the exception of 2020, we organize Candidates Night to help all citizens decide who to cast their ballot for in the upcoming town election. We always welcome new members to the Women's Club interested in our service organization to visit our website at .org. Our format begins with an opening statement from each candidate. Each one will have 2 minutes for remarks, and our timers tonight volunteers from Hopkinton High School, Taylor Clancy and Ellie Power. Thank you. They will periodically notify candidates of how much speaking time is left, and when signify the end of 2 minutes, and we'll move on. Now, on to our first candidate in alphabetical order. Your position, voters can choose two. Joe Clark.
Hi everyone, Joe Clark, like she said, running for select board. Great to be here tonight. I was born and raised in town, grew up right up the street on Grove Street. My family has worked time. My dad over 40 years in the fire department. At the end, my mother's still a teacher today in Hopkins School. And one of the big things that got me out this year was just seeing the change in town over the last couple of years. We have lost a lot of town employees. I think most prominently, if we look at the police department, town hall, north of 24 people leaving the town. That just frustrates me. I have a ton of pride in a family that's served this town. They have a tremendous amount of pride in the public service that they've given to Hopkinton. And to see the town as a state where people are no longer, enjoying working here or want to stay working here, that deeply hurts me. And so, I look at this as an opportunity to kind of reset some things. And, as we move forward, how do we get new leadership in the town that's going to instill confidence in our leadership? And right now, if we look, we've got more things than we've ever had to deal with that it's really just a critical time. We've got the Main Street Corridor project that needs to be finished. We've got 2 school projects that are going to be a very large investment for the town. We've got drinking water issues. Combine all these things and, and most importantly, the new town manager needs to be filled as well. Can't forget that. So all these things really gave me kind of the kick I needed to get out of my seat, not just complain about things, get up and do something about it. So I'm here today, looking for everyone's support to bring this town into a new direction. And, the town's going to continue to change. I look forward to that. This is about guiding the town to a new point as it evolves, but also giving a look on the past and keeping that charm that Hopkinton has always had. And it's really tough to do that if you haven't been in town for a long time. So thank you for the time tonight.
Brian Herr.
Hello, everybody. 17 years ago, I stopped in for the first Meet the Candidates night that I did, running for select board. I don't remember where it was, but I know I was there, and I've been at all the various ones ever since. As mentioned, my name is Brian Herr. It's great to be here tonight. Thank you for organizing the event. Thank you to HCAM for putting it together and getting the word out to the residents of Hopkinton. I think, as Joe mentioned, we're in a critical time here in Hopkinton, and I thought that we had things set on a certain path a few years back, but unfortunately for different reasons, I think it's time to reset and refocus some of our energy to move us forward together, again, as one community. It's going to be an interesting process, I think, for the next couple of years. We've got some significant debt coming at us. As somebody that prided himself on keeping on top of the town budget on a very regular basis, the debt service line alone makes me very nervous. We're going from 17 million in FY24, I'm sorry, 7 million in FY24 to 17 million in FY28. That is a huge increase. It's going to put a lot of pressure on our bond rating, and our bond rating is what drives the economics for budget purposes, interest rates, things like that within the town budget. So a lot of reasons why I'm getting back in the process here. I look forward to the questions tonight, and I appreciate everybody coming out and asking those questions of us. Thank you.
Thank you. For Select Board, Kyla McSweeney.
Thank you. As said, my name is Kyla McSweeney, and I'm running for Select Board. And I thank you to the Women's Club and to HCAM for hosting us tonight. In 2007, my husband James and I moved to Hopkinton. Like many of the rest of you, we enjoyed the recreational spaces, the great schools, and then we are raising 2 children here. My son Quinn is at Hopkinton Middle School in the 8th grade. My daughter Sierra is at Hopkins School in the 5th grade. During the day, I work at the State Department of Early Education and Care, where I manage a large number of grant programs, some that you might have heard of in the news. These require a lot of complex budget negotiations and compliance. Actually, I'm spending my day tomorrow making sure one of our school districts is complying with some of our regulations. I think I can directly transfer these skills to work on the Select Board. We have some really pressing budget matters coming at us. As our candidate said before, we have downtown quarter project needs to be finished. We have school projects. I think we're going to have to make some really tough decisions in the upcoming months and years. And I really think that I can use my experience to kind of guide those decisions. I also think it's really important. I've been hearing from a lot of people in town that they don't feel heard in town, that no one's asking them what they think. And I think also for the employees in town, we really have to listen to them and see what their experiences are and what they are looking for in management for the town. That is why I'm running for Select Board, and I look forward to answering your questions and for your support.
Thank you. Also for Select Board, Peter Mimo.
Thank you. And good evening. Thank you first to the Women's Club for hosting tonight's event, for all the work you do in our community. My name is Peter Mimo, and I'm running for Select Board town. And my wife and I, Diane, and our 2 sons moved here to Hopkinton in 2015. Not surprisingly for the terrific schools that were here, and they certainly did not disappoint. My oldest son is presently a junior in Boston College, and my youngest son is a freshman in high school, and he's having a terrific educational experience here. It's very important that we continue to support the schools in our town, continue to do so. I decided to run for Select Board because I think that using my experience as a civil litigator for the Commonwealth now for the last 20 years, I think I can leverage that experience and offer measured, bold, and thoughtful leadership to our town. Not surprisingly, I've devoted my entire career to the Commonwealth, and in that sense, it's the public service. And so I feel the call to public service once again. When I'm not working for the Commonwealth, and I'm not enforcing our state's anti-discrimination laws, then what I'm doing, I'm volunteering my time. In 2022, the voters of this town were very gracious and voted me to be a member of our town Board of Assessors, and I thank them for that vote. If I'm fortunate enough now to earn your vote over the next few weeks, then some of the priorities that I have in mind include things like supporting our green initiatives that we're going to see on our town meeting coming up on May the 6th, supporting targeted and helpful tax relief to some of our seniors who need it the most. And in addition to that, and most importantly, I want to make myself available so I can understand and help interpret the will of our community, be a good listener. One of the things that you had an opportunity to see my website is that I want to make sure that I make myself available through office hours. I will try to meet with members of the community so I can learn and understand and better appreciate what it is that you want from your Select Board. And so I see that my time is up. I do hope in the next weeks or a few weeks or so I get to learn and hear more from you, and I do hope to earn your vote on May the 20th. Thank you.
Thank you. For School Committee, for the 3-year position, there are 2 openings. One candidate is here, Jamie Ronka.
Thank you. My name is Jeannie Bronca. I'm running for the Hopkinton School Committee. Like many families, my husband and I moved to Hopkinton in 2012 for the excellent school district. Maintaining the integrity and quality of our schools while balancing the importance of fiscal responsibility is a vital challenge that affects all residents of Hopkinton. I've been an occupational therapist for nearly 20 years. In 2022, I moved from clinical care to a visiting professor role at Worcester State University. My experience and skills developed in the clinical and educator settings are essential for a school committee member. My passion that inspired me to run for school committee has been ignited over the last year as Vice Chair of the Special Education Parent Advisory Council. One of my children receives support via an IEP, and I walk in the shoes of a special education parent who works full-time and has 2 other children and 2 dogs every day. I hope to empower every student and every family to thrive within our school system, the public education guaranteed to every student in our country. I know the challenges all families face navigating our systems and the importance of strong policies, close and thoughtful budget decisions, and supervision of the leader of our schools are inarguably vital as we navigate this period of tremendous population growth in town. As Mr. Rogers says, what is mentionable is manageable. And I think open communication with town residents and stakeholders in our schools are really important to supporting our district. I have a deeply vested interest in public education. I attended public school from first grade through graduate school. My mother was a public elementary school nurse. Growing up in New Jersey, my school was very diverse, and my education experience was richer for it. I'm thrilled to see the increasing diversity in Hopkinton, giving my children and the whole community a better lens through which to view the world. I ask for your vote on May 20th, and I look forward to working. Thank you.
Thank you. For Board of Assessors, the 3-year position, you can vote for 1, Leslie A. Fakari, the incumbent.
Thank you, Kathy, and Hopkinton Women's Club for hosting this wonderful event in HCAM. And thank you to our Hopkinton neighbors who are watching on TV. I'm Leslie Carey, and I'm running for re-election to the Board of Assessors for a 3-year term. A lot of people don't know what the Board of Assessors does, and so our key responsibilities are to help our assessing department in valuing real estate in town and personal property, considering tax abatements along with exemptions, and providing data and analysis for setting the annual tax rate according to Massachusetts state law. I'm honored to be a member of this board for the last 7 years, and I'm currently serving as the chair. We work closely with great town folks in Town Hall, John Neese, who is our principal assessor, and Renee Chen, who is our deputy assessor. A little bit about me. I'm an HR executive and a leadership coach, and my husband and I have been active in the community since 2001 when we moved here, and we very much enjoy living in Hopkinton. To all my fellow candidates, I am always impressed to see people come out and want to contribute to the town of Hopkinton. Again, I'm Leslie Fakari, and I respectfully ask for your vote on May 20th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Commission is a 1-year position where you can vote for 1. Kyle Smith.
How you doing? Kyle Smith. My wife and I just moved to Hopkinton in August of this past year. And we're extremely intentional about selecting where we were going to choose to live for hopefully 20 plus years. And picked Hopkinton for, the prestige of the great school system, sure. But also some of the local amenities that come along with it, the look of the town. But we didn't want to just take and say, great, Hopkinton has all this stuff. We're going to be consumers of the town of Hopkinton. We also wanted to give back, which is why I'm running for Parks and Rec. Small way to try to contribute to the town and help to continue make it flourish, which is why we moved here. Specifically for me, avid pickleball player, played for the last 4 years, basically since COVID. Every single court, I think, in central and eastern Massachusetts. Excited that we're having one here. Would love to help run it, make sure that it's open, welcoming. Also live over by the lake, so knowing that Sandy Beach is part of Parks and Rec's under their purview, would love to ensure that that continues to be a welcoming spot for all residents. That's it. Kyle Smith, Parks and Rec. Thanks.
Thank you. For Planning Board, it is a 1-year position. You can vote for 1. Karen Mill.
Thank you to the Women's Group for hosting this tonight, and hello, my fellow Hopkinton residents. As she indicated, my name is Karen Wills, and I'm running for the Planning Board. Having been part of this community for over 30 years, I've not only witnessed but have lived through many of the transformations within Hopkinton. My 3 children grew up here. They went through the school system in both the nurturing environment and the community spaces that we've all shared. To give you a little bit of information about myself, I have a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and an MBA, and I spent my career trying to balance the technical world of engineering with the strategic scope of marketing. This experience has honed my ability to listen and to weigh diverse perspectives and to forge innovative solutions that respect various viewpoints and interests. And what I found out through all of these is that transparency is the key. Over the years, I've seen many changes in our town, some that have propelled us forward and others that have not been fully aligned with the community's best interests. Through conversations with many of you, it's been clear that there's a shared vision for Hopkinton to progress and grow while maintaining the warm, family-oriented character that makes this town so special. While we all know that change is inevitable, it's how we manage that change that's crucial. As a member of the planning board, I will ensure that our development respects the values and the traditions of Hopkinton while embracing the future. I'm committed to transparency and integrity in all the decisions, ensuring that your voice is heard and respected and reflected in all our actions. I'm here to work with you and for you, and to ensure that Hopkinton remains a wonderful place to live for both current and new families. I look forward to navigating these changes with you with careful planning and a clear focus on what makes our community unique. Let us make smart, respectful, and responsible decisions that will keep our town thriving. Your priorities are my priorities, and I respectfully ask for your vote on May 20th, so that together we can ensure Hopkinton continues to flourish while keeping its heart and soul intact. Thank you very much.
Thank you. For Housing Authority, there's a 5-year position and 1 opening. The candidate is an incumbent, Alana Cassidy, and she's unable to be here, but she did write a statement, and I'm going to read it. And I quote, "I'm sorry I could not be here in person tonight. I've been honored to learn and serve on the Hopkinton Housing Authority for this past year. I look forward to serving the town and the residents of the Housing Authority for this upcoming full term. Thank you, Alana." And next up, Housing Authority, Board of Health. 3 years, you can vote for 1, Mary Jo Ondergan. Did I say that right?
Thank you, yes. So, thank you to the fabulous women of the Women's Club. Thank you to HCAM, our wonderful, awesome student volunteers, to the studio audience, and those watching at home. My name is Mary Jo Ondergan, and I'm a candidate for the Hopkinton Board of Health. Hopkinton has been my home for 27 years, and I want to step up and serve. I'm running primarily because I'm concerned about contaminants in the drinking water and about pandemic response. I'm a professor of chemistry and chemical biology at Northeastern University. I have a doctorate in chemistry. I lead a research group of 14 people, and we work on a variety of problems, including infectious diseases. I've previously consulted for the Department of Energy about remediation of toxic contaminants. 2 hallmarks of my advocacy for remediation are 1, to use the latest and best technology to solve the problem, and 2, to listen to and involve the people affected. As an educator, I see up close the after effects of the pandemic, the learning loss, the mental health effects on our young people. I offer my energy, my experience, and my knowledge to this wonderful town, and I respectfully ask for your vote on May 20th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. For Cemetery Commission, a 2-year position with 1 opening, Arlene Casassa. She'd like to stand and say hello.
Hi, my name is Arlene Casassa. I have been living in Hopkinton since 1995 and have raised 4 children in the Hopkinton public school systems. I'm a speech pathologist, continue to have my speech pathologist degree and do some part-time speech therapy. But my main interest all through has always been serving those in the community and making sure that not only the needs of just children, but the needs of adults are also recognized and seniors are also recognized in the community. What the last few years, before I retired in 2017 from the schools, I did do a lot of volunteering at the senior center. And at that point is when I really recognized the needs for just reassurance and just for the needs for people to come out and talk and be among other seniors and people their age that felt comfortable in meeting their needs. So I've seen a lot of changes in the senior center over those years since 2017. And one of the things that I wanted to try to continue to do is to work towards something that would benefit us as aging adults in the town. And the Cemetery Commission was an opening, and I saw that as an opening, so I decided to try it. My friend Linda Kimball is also the cemetery 3-year position, and she also told me about that there would be an opening, so I decided to try it, and that's why I'm here tonight. I hope respectfully would like your support, and any time that you'd like to have any questions about that, I'd be willing to entertain your answers and questions and try to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you. It is now time for the second part of our program, the question and answer segment. If you have a question that hasn't already been submitted, you can email one to live@hcam.tv. Please include your name and address along with your question. Responses from candidates will continue to adhere to the 2-minute time limit. If a question is posed to a specific candidate, I'll offer response time to all others running for that office as well. Lastly, the privilege of being the first person to answer will begin alphabetically and rotate as subsequent questions are asked. We're ready now for the first question from the audience, so line up. These people have been studying town government for the last year.
I didn't think this was a shy group.
Questions, concerns? This is the first time this has ever happened in my whole life.
You said you want them texted to you, right? It takes a minute or two.
You can't text them, it has to be an email.
Well, email, whatever,
Yes.
yeah. Same thing.
Or you can come up, the audience can just stand and ask. Or you can give it to me and I'll ask, your choice.
Okay, Ed Harrow, I have a question for the school committee. We have a parking crisis. And it seems to me the American tradition would be supply and demand. If the demand is greater than the supply, then the solution normally is the price goes up. That's my suggestion. Comments?
Thank you so much for that suggestion. I will take a closer look at the policies on parking, but I can, not being elected to an office yet, make a plug for the parent-teacher organization. We just raffled off parking spots and a fundraiser that supports the schools. So feel free to look for that in the future.
Other questions? This is an opportunity of a lifetime.
John Cardillo, 84 Winter Street. To everybody, actually. We have Representative McGovern coming to town in the next couple of days, Thursday at the library. We've had several other, Spilka was here, and a few others have come to listen to us. Can you, not promise, but can you possibly set time aside during the course of your terms to meet with the people and find out what's going on with them and listen to them?
Okay.
Thank you. So, one of the things I had outlined when I introduced myself was that I pledged to sort of make myself available for office hours. I think that far too often, the way that we sort of communicate with the community at large, it would seem, We have an opportunity at public comment at select board meetings, which has its limitations. We also have the opportunity to communicate with each other through social media, which tends to be a bit of an echo chamber. One of the things that I pledged myself is to make myself available for some form of, call it office hours. I'm not a professor, but something along those lines, person to person contact where I make myself available. My wife is probably going to kill me for suggesting it, but I'm suggesting it, and I'm making myself available for that. Person-to-person discussions with people who care enough about to want to talk to a public official. And certainly that's how if I'm going to govern, if I'm going to be an effective member of town government, I have to understand what the will of the community is. And that's one of the ways I think that probably an effective way for me to understand what that is. So yes, you have my pledge on that.
So I've already started having conversations with people. I'm not elected yet. Ed and I had coffee a few weeks ago. I have a few more set up already. So I welcome anyone who's watching. If you want to set up some time already and bring your concerns to the campaign, I'm happy to meet you for a coffee. Or if you want to jog slowly with me in the morning, I'm happy to have you do that as well. But yes, I do, like Peter, think it should continue also if I'm lucky enough to be elected.
So John raises a really good point. And if you're working on the select board and you're working the various issues in town and you're working just inside Hopkinton, you're missing some opportunities. So Senator Spilka, the Senate President, is a very powerful person in Massachusetts government, obviously. She's readily available. She has a really good relationship with Hopkinton. She loves Hopkinton. She was out here just a couple weeks ago, right before the marathon started. She came out to an event and spoke for quite a bit. So she's great. Representative Arena, new to the job. I think he's doing a great job so far. I've met him a couple of times, but I don't know him as well as Senator Spilka. But yeah, I think we have to engage those folks all the time. The downtown corridor project and the frustration we have right now with Eversource and the transformers, that's a huge opportunity to go in and sit down with Senator Spilka and try and get the president of Eversource to come in and sit down as well and figure out where our transformers are. We can probably get into that later on this evening too. But I think having those relationships is really important, and we got to work those, and I know that she's very receptive to doing that. Thank you.
Joe Clark?
So I think my fellow candidates said it really well. I certainly agree to pledge to do the same. I look at it, I remember going back to being a kid, and we've always had good representation from the state involved in town, whether it's the marathon. Brian brings up something really important now with the Main Street Corridor project. I look at Eversource, what we have at the LNG facility is a vested interest in Eversource, right? And I think that deserves a different type of conversation that some of our bordering towns probably couldn't ask for. And so combined with the state's representation, I think we can kind of move some things along a little bit differently. So I hope to do that.
Thank you. School committee candidate Jamie Ronco, do you want to?
Yes, I would love to talk to anyone who's interested in talking about the schools. I've spent the last my daughter's in second grade, so starting when she started kindergarten, I joined the executive board of the PTO. I've been serving on that since then, and a year and a half ago I joined the board of CPAC. So success in the schools for every student and every family is deeply important to me, and I can't gauge that without feedback from families and students who are going through the schools right now.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Board of Assessors, Leslie Fakari, did you want to address that?
I would say that I'm always available for people to reach out to me and talk to me. I think we don't have a lot of people who come to the Board of Assessors meetings, and we are always welcoming people to come in. We do have the availability for people to, if they're not happy with their assessment, to talk about that, and John Neese works with them very closely, and then they can come in and talk to us at the board also. So yes, absolutely. Again, our topic is a little boring sometimes, but really available here to talk to folks.
Kyle, do you want to address for Recreation Department?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, the easiest way to find out for Parks and Rec in particular what people want is to use the actual facilities, be around, go to the dog park, go to Sandy Beach, go to the pickleball courts, be at recreation fields, and understand what the needs are of the residents. So 100% committed to listening to what people want, not only of what's currently existing, which I just mentioned, but also seeing what could be. So what could Parks and Rec be providing that they aren't currently, and trying to understand the needs of or wants of the residents, 100%.
Thank you. Karen Wills, running for Planning Board.
Yeah, I think as I explained a little bit earlier in my opening statement, I'm used to working in business, and you work both up and down the chain. And I think working with our executives in the state government for what they can do for Hopkinton, I think that's a great thing. Again, I've already been out there. I've been talking to a lot of different people and listening to you. So making sure that I am representing both your interests as well as working with the state to make sure we get what we want and what we need from them is something that's key. So thank you.
Okay. Running for Board of Health, Mary Jo Anderkin. Did you want to address that?
Well, as I mentioned about dealing with like contaminants in the drinking water, the issues, needs, and concerns of the affected people are paramount in my mind. Right now, the health department in the town has a serious budget crisis. Vaccination services have stopped, and we need to solve that problem. So, of course, we need to listen to ideas about how to solve that problem.
Thank you. Cemetery Commission, Arlene Casassa, do you want to address? Or do you want to just raise your hand and say, I promise I will? I think you're getting to like the mic.
I just wanted to say, I do think that being available for people to ask any questions, especially as they get older, because the technology is always changing. And as technology changes, new guidelines, new regulations, new laws come into effect. So keeping the lines of open communication is very important, no matter how old you are, no matter where you are in the community, or no matter how you serve. That's all.
Thank you. This question is for all Select Board candidates. How will you reestablish the integrity of Hopkinton municipal elections? Most recently, in the last election, the community has seen some problematic issues that have eroded the public trust, including misuse of social media, improper vetting of candidates, and personal attacks on candidates and community members. What mistakes have you seen, and how do you think it's best to move forward in changing the divisive political culture in Hopkinton? The question was submitted by Ashley Fogg, 5 Cross Street. So we'll start this time with Joe Clark.
I think that's a great question. I think that's one of the things that I saw last year with Ashley's running, and we saw the outpouring of support afterwards. But what happened was completely unacceptable. People should not be using social media to tear down people's character. I look at what we've done in town over last year with removing caucuses. I think in general, the parties in the country over the last couple of years has divided the country. I think we have an opportunity now to approach things from just what's in the best interest of Hopkinton. That's what I think the select board has the opportunity to do. And I'd like to see us remain focused on that. And we've got to come together as a community and get away from this, tearing people down, tearing apart the town. We've got a lot of issues to solve, and it's not going to happen if we're all fighting against each other. So the more we can come together, the better for it.
Thank you. Brian Herr.
I would start with the word respect. I think respect is a very important part of the public process. And if we respect each other as candidates, we respect each other as voters, we respect each other in the various boards and committees in town, and we all work together. I think that we can elevate the conversation again in Hopkinton. For many, many years, Hopkinton was moving forward. We've had a ton of successes in the last 20, 25 years, and that's when everybody was working together to make things happen. In the last couple of years, we've stalled a little bit, and I think a lot of folks feel that frustration in that stall, and some of that stems from and comes from how we sort of behave when we go to the polls and in advance of the polls. So I'm a big believer in respect. I've already reached out to all the folks running for select board this year and said, no games, none of that stuff. We're not playing none of that. We're just going to talk about the issues, let the voters know where we stand on the various issues, what our ideas are to move us forward together, and just leave everything else behind. So I'm a big believer in respect. I think folks have seen that over the years while I served on the board. But, you know, it comes down to individuals making good, sound decisions themselves and holding themselves accountable. But we as a community, I think, need to make sure that we make everybody, or at least get everyone to understand that respect matters, and it can make a big difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Kyla McSweeney?
I agree totally with candidates Her and Clark on this. I think we all need to have a mutual respect for each other. And we have had conversations already about having transparency and respect into our campaign. I also think while social media is helpful for spreading information around town, it's not helpful to be getting into mean-spirited debates with each other on those platforms. I think that's very downgrading, and it's not useful for our town at all. If you read my profile, you've heard me talk about that I may not always agree with everybody in town, but I will absolutely listen to everybody in town and have an opportunity for people to tell me what their opinions and their thoughts are. And I do believe we all need to work together for Hopkinton. Thanks.
Thank you. Peter Mimo?
Thank you for that question. I agree that it's a very important question. And I think that, you know, I remember when I first started running, one of the first actions I had done, I'd reached out to former select board members, Mr. Herb being one of them, also Brendan Tedstone. And I did so because I respected their experience, and I did so because I wanted to learn more about what it is to actually be a member of the select board. In order to, and I think that's important to point out, is because you need to be able to work with and build rapport, even with those perhaps politically you don't necessarily see eye to eye about. And what matters the most, I think, is, of course, is showing that type of respect, and you argue the issue. You try to build consensus if you can, but you argue the issue. You don't argue the person. You respect the people. Everyone in this room who's sitting here who's putting themselves out here tonight, we're all volunteers. We're all volunteering our time. We don't have to be here. We're here because we all love our community. We all want to be here to try to help advance our community. And I think that needs to be respected. And I certainly have an awful lot of respect for everyone in this room tonight. And I have every intention of doing so as my campaign continues on. I'm very proud of the campaign that I've run so far. I think I've run so with integrity and transparency, and I expect to continue to do so. And I do hope that everyone gets out there to vote, and we do so in a way that respects everyone who is in part of this process. Thank you.
Thank you. This question is for the select board candidates and the planning board candidates. With temperatures warming and increasing threats posed to us here from flooding, extreme temperatures, and storms, and more as a result, what measures will you support and take? For example, Article 36 for a specialized building code is on the warrant to make new construction use electricity instead of fossil fuels, a needed initiative to meet net zero by 2045. The measure failed in 2023. This year, the select board has endorsed it. What is your stand on the new code and other environmental actions? This question was submitted by Linda Schus, who's a member of the Sustainable Green Committee, who sponsored the article, but she's asking this question as a private citizen. 11 School Street, Hopkinton, Mass. So this time we'll start with Peter Mimo, and then we'll go backwards.
Well, thank you again for that question. As I indicated in my opening remarks, I'm a supporter of the green initiatives, and that this being one of them, the specialized code, I think is important to help our community achieve net zero emissions in our new structures and commercial and in residential structures. And I think that it's going to help us. Some important components to it would seem to be is that it would allow for a market choice, to allow for pre-wiring of our new construction, so give people the choice to do so. Speaking personally, we just recently made the switch over from gas stoves to electric stoves. We're very happy with that option. But I would imagine that it would have been less expensive, a little less onerous had we had that option if we had a new construction. But in any event, I do believe that we ought to support that green initiative. I note that on the town warrant, we're also looking at the ability to try to study the PFAS issue. I'm a supporter of that article as well at town meeting, and I think that we need to continue to advance that agenda.
Thank you. Kyla McSweeney?
Linda and I had a conversation about this recently, and we're continuing that conversation and sitting down for coffee, kind of continuing on my thread. When we had the conversation, I indicated some concerns I had for Linda. My husband and I just built a house in Hopkinton. This is our third home in Hopkinton. And I was a little concerned about the regulations that are within that article, that they might be onerous for people trying to build modest homes such as my husband and I. If you've seen my house, you know my address, you can drive by. It's a not one of these big mansions in Hopkinton. We put everything we had into building that house and used every penny it could. And I was worried about regulations that were going to cost a lot of money, but she is allowed me to do some reading, and it suggested some articles so that I can look into that and realize that there are many incentives and savings that are within those different pieces that are involved into the article, which gives you an example about how if we have a conversation, I can do some homework and really change my mind about conversations, and am now in support of the initiative.
Thank you.
So this question's a little bit tricky for me in that I'm in the renewable energy business. I'm a solar developer. I work here in Hopkinton. And for the many years I sat on the board, and every time somebody said the word solar, I got up and sprinted off the board because you have to recuse yourself. You don't want any kind of conflict of interest or an appearance of a conflict of interest. So sometimes the guys are messing with me and they just say solar to see me get up and leave. But seriously, as a candidate, I think I can speak to it, but I can assure you if elected and solar does come up, I will continue to recuse myself because I don't want that appearance of a conflict of interest. Solar is mentioned quite a bit in this article, the proposed article. And while we don't do residential solar, my business, I'm in the industry, so I just always want to be very, very clear about it. I think that the idea of getting to a net zero environment is fabulous. I mean, I'm in this world of trying to save the earth from fossil fuels. That's what I do for a living. The challenge is we have to make sure that the technologies that we're trying to adopt today are readily available and cost competitive to the marketplace for other technologies that are out there right now and have been used in the past. I talked to Linda about this briefly, but not a whole lot. My concern is that we may try to push too much early on and not be ready so that we can actually do the work that's proposed in these bylaws or in this building permit process. So I would want to study it further. As somebody in the construction business forever and now solar construction, permits are a really important piece of the puzzle for us. And I don't want us to get ahead of that process for market conditions, for manufacturers that build the materials that we're going to need to meet these codes, as well as the supply chain logistics, getting products like that to sites so you can actually use it in buildings in a timely manner. So something to consider. I'd love to figure out a way to make it work because I'm in this business, but we got to be careful that we don't get ahead of ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Clark?
I think it's a very interesting opportunity for the town as we look at this. You know, I know initially my concerns when I started brushing up on Article 36 were, what does that do for affordability in town? I think, candidate McSweeney mentioned it. The first thing that jumped out to me, the first thought was, what does that do for people that are trying to do, renovations, remodels, additions, to make their homes, a little bit better for their growing families or whatever their needs are. This article doesn't kind of impact it all, so I think that's great. But I do know that there's a lot of costs associated with this. So I think we need to look at kind of the big picture. Residential, I fully support it. Commercial, I'd love to know, and I'd love to dig in deeper as we look at, developing our economic development in town. Are there limits to this that, or are there factors to this that would limit our ability to drive new commercial business into town? Overall, I think it's a great idea. It's a great target to shoot for. I just need to understand a little bit more about the commercial effects. Residential, I fully support. Thank you.
One moment for technical adjustments. Testing? Testing? Testing, okay, no more testing. From the planning board, Karen Wills, to address the question. Do you need me to repeat it?
No,
Okay.
I'm good. Yeah, no, one more time. Thank you for the question. And in listening to all the responses from the select board candidates and things, there's a lot of what they say that I agree with. I think, I'm all for saving the environment, but I do think that we need to look at the impact on the residents. I think candidate McSweeney, I was going to say Kyle, but I remember the last name, actually brought up a very good point. But as did Joe Clark, candidate Clark, in terms of looking at what is the impact on bringing commercial organizations into Hopkinton to help offset tax base, various other things in the organization. So we have to see what the impact is and how fast we might want to implement this. But overall, I do think it's a good idea to continue to move forward, save the planet, but keep an eye on the residents and the businesses that are currently here. Thank you.
Thank you. This question comes from Karen Crum. Hello, here's a question based on what I've heard, seen in person, and read in online comments. Thank you for considering it. In recent months, residents that have expressed their disapproval of the Select Board's decisions, whether at board meetings or in writing. In response, these residents have then been asked by members of other town boards and committees if they're going to be running for Select Board, reminding them that these are volunteer positions and asked to list the areas they serve in town. To the candidates running for Select Board, do you agree with this response to residents that voice their opinions? Please share how you feel about this response to residents who speak out. Joe Clark?
I think you got to know what you're signing up for with Select Board, right? This is front and center with the town. You have to expect, the town of Hopkinton has always been involved. The community's always been outspoken. I hope that never changes. And I think, I know I went in, full disclosure, knowing what I was getting myself into. People still to this day ask me, are you crazy for getting involved in this? I'm happy to. I want to see more involvement from people in town, more people speaking up, good and bad. I don't love the commenting on social media. I think, I prefer people to kind of reach out directly. I think since I started my campaign, I've made myself available. I've met a lot of people in town that have reached out, grab a coffee, grab a beer, just talk on the phone for a few minutes. I will continue to encourage that. So I don't really think the idea of, because it's, and I may have heard this wrong, but pushing it back on the selectmen, or pushing it back on the residents as if well, it's a volunteer thing, you can do that. I don't love that idea. I think you got to know what you're getting into in Select Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Herr?
I think the question was about, do we agree with people pushing back on others because they're not running for office? Is that what I heard someone say?
It seems
Perhaps?
like it's residents, if they're running for Select Board, reminding them that these are volunteer positions and asked to list the areas they serve in town. In other words, if you speak out, why aren't you serving?
Yeah, okay. So I go back to what I said a few minutes ago about respect. I think that people, we have to respect each other regardless of whether we're running for office or not, whether we can run for office or not. Some folks are very comfortable coming up here and doing this and having questions come at them that they've never seen or heard before, and they have to answer it, and other folks are not comfortable doing that, and that's not a good thing or a bad thing. It just is what it is. So I think we just have to be respectful of each other, respectful of each other's wishes. Some people are very comfortable and happy to do it. Others can do other things besides run for office to help the town. So it goes back to respect for me. And I think if we all get back to that, we'll be in a better place. Thanks.
Thank you. Kyla McSweeney, please.
I absolutely agree. I also feel that everybody in town has a voice. Not everybody has a vote in town because you have to be 18, you have to be a citizen, but everybody has a voice and should be able to make their voice heard if they're living in town. So going back to our themes, I want to hear from those people. I want them to hold our Select Board accountable and to be able to have good conversations, ask hard questions, and get their voice heard.
Thank you. Peter Memo?
Thank you for the question. So, this race, I joined it with operating under no illusion. All the work that I'm going to be doing, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected to the select board, will be subject to a significant amount of scrutiny. Thick skin if you're going to serve on the select board. I would like to think that, if with a new select board coming on board with 2 new members, that we're able to perhaps bring the temperature down just a little bit. And tried to do so. But I don't think you do that by telling people, let's bring the temperature down. I think you do so through leadership. You do so by being responsive. And I think that hopefully when we're able to do that by showing respect and being responsive, we are going to hopefully take that temperature down, which is I'm hoping that we can accomplish. So thank you.
Thank you. This question is for school committee, planning board, and select board candidates. It's from Amy Ritterbush, 54 Grove Street. Have you attended any of the cultural and diversity events in town in recent years, such as the Lunar New Year celebration, the Diwali events, the Interfaith Iftar dinner, or the Pride Parade? If elected, would you commit to attending some of these events as an elected official? So we can start with the school committee this time. Jamie Ronka?
I love going to those events. I love bringing my family to them. We particularly love the Holy event that's held at Weston Nurseries with the colors. We make sure we wear our white. We get all covered in powdered color, and lots of great celebrating involved there. We also marched in the Pride Parade last year. I was there as part of the CPAC board. We had little rainbow CPAC shirts. I think celebrating the diversity that we have in Hopkinton is a huge value, and it brings great things to our environment here. And so I think the more that we all participate in those celebrations, the better we are and the better our community is.
For planning board, Karen Wills, would you like to come up and respond?
Sure, why not?
You don't have a choice. No.
Yeah, okay. Sure, I don't think I don't attend them every year. I think I may have attended them on occasion, being, a working mom with 3 kids and all sorts of stuff going on. But yes, I think participation from all of Hopkinton's residents and all of the different diverse activities we have in town is always a good idea.
Thank you. Select board, we'll start this time with Peter Memo.
Well, thank you for the question. I think that I can't say that I've attended in the community, but as a Commonwealth employee, we have a very robust diversity program in education and training, which I've attended and, of course, completed. And I think that, we've had a number of other opportunities. We've learned an awful lot of presentations from the Mass Commission from the Blind about the challenges that are faced by those persons who are served by that agency. I must say, though, I do have a bit of a particular advantage in the sense of with the type of work that I do. Day in and day out, my work is committed to enforcing our state's anti-discrimination laws, and our commitment to diversity is evident in the work that I do. We just recently had an opportunity to win a very significant appeals court case in the Mass Appeals Court, where we, for the very first time, in the docks of New Bedford, there will be a woman who will be a member of the joint of that longshoremen's union because of the work of the committee, and I successfully argued that case. We're breaking down barriers. The cases that are assigned to me, I get a broken workplace where sexual harassment is tolerated, or discrimination against people because of their LGBT status is tolerated. I inherit those workplaces and I fix them. That's the work that I do day in and day out. And so, but to answer the question directly, I would certainly commit to attending to our local diverse events. Thank you.
Thank you. Kyla McSweeney, please.
Last year, I had a great opportunity to join in the Pride Parade and had a great time, myself and my daughter. Was looking forward to going to the Holly event this year, but we're going to be hanging out together, debating each other on Sunday afternoon instead, which should be not quite as much fun as that event. Recently, I was renting in Legacy Farms and had an opportunity to be a part of many of the celebrations there, a lot of them happening right in my community. There were bake sales, there were fairs, there were dances right outside my front door that I was able to participate in, enjoyed that. So I hope to attend more in the future.
Thank you. Brian, her?
Over the years, I've attended countless events in town. 17 years of volunteering on behalf of the community will get you out quite a bit. The last couple of years, I have not attended too many events because I took a little break. And so, yeah, I will attend certain things when I can, whatever those things are. I have a busy schedule with business and life and select board and the budget, which is in my briefcase over there. I'm already studying how we work on that a little bit. But sure, I go to a lot of different events and I enjoy meeting people. And I think, getting out and about, it's all about understanding the general will. Peter's doing a nice job tonight talking about the general will of the community and making sure that we understand it. And then we listen to it, we recognize it, we try to follow it whenever possible. And I totally agree that that's a great way to go about this job. And getting out to events is one way to get that input.
Thank you. Joe Clark?
I have not attended those events that, I believe it was Amy, right, that wrote in about. My daughters are young, they're just getting to the age where we're starting to be able to attend town events without them, screaming after 2 minutes and having to run out with them. So to answer directly, I commit myself to attending some of those and learning more about them. So I look forward to it.
Thank you. Did everyone answer that? Wanted to? All right, this is for the select board candidates. What would you do about the Upper Charles Trails Committee considering last year's town meeting vote to reorganize the committee under the guidance of the Town Trails Committee? And this question is from Steve Frobiter, 39 Sanctuary Lane. So this time we'll start with Joe Clark.
One of the things I noticed last year was, I believe at town meeting after town meeting when this was voted on, there was an overwhelming majority by the residents of town to, change the structure of the Upper Charles Trail Committee. And I think a lot of people were frustrated that, the town got out, voted, shared their opinions, and it seemed like nothing was done about it. Especially when you consider that, there was a lot of effort that went into that, and that effort required costs to, determine, what they were going to do, and, the fact that we're here a year later without any progress on it, I think it's time to reevaluate, look at changing some things. So I'm certainly open to that.
Thank you. Brian Herr?
When town meeting voted to disband the Upper Charles Trails Committee and send it back to the select board, even though it was a non-binding vote, the general will of the community was heard by everybody that attended that town meeting. We would like to change up the Upper Charles Trails Committee. Select board, please go back and take care of it. They did not, for whatever reason, and it's been languishing for a year now, and they missed an opportunity, I think. If they reset it back a year ago, they could have reset it and not necessarily thrown out everybody's worried about, getting volunteers and throwing them out of the way and saying, oh, all the volunteers are off, we'll get out of the way. That's not what that should have been about. What it should have been about is resetting the charge of the Upper Charles Trails Committee. And then you could restaff it with the same volunteers, or maybe some different volunteers, what have you. But I think they missed an opportunity not listening to the general will of town meeting. It's the role of the select board to listen to the general will of town meeting and follow town meeting and the decisions we make at town meeting. And that was, I think, one of the sources in the last year of the frustration that's really built in the community because they're just kind of doing their own thing. And I think it's very, very important that we always listen to the general will, not of the broader community, not only of the broader community, but of town meeting. When town meeting says you're going to do X, you go do X. Thank you.
Thank you. Kyla McSweeney, please.
This is another topic that I've been talking in my conversations with people amongst coffee and everything. I do think there's some opportunities for some new leadership in this area, and that we haven't had some good solutions from the committee already. The idea of bringing it within the Trails Committee, it could be an innovative product. I'd like to learn more and to discuss more about that and what the implications of that are, but we definitely need some better solutions. I'm a huge fan of the trails in town, the Upper Charles Trail itself. As I mentioned, I'm a jogger, and I'm really looking forward to a good solution for that.
Thank you. Peter Mimo?
Thank you for the question. I think that I would echo an awful lot of what Brian had to say about that, and also what Kyla had to say about that. In particular, I do think we need to take a harder look at how that organization is structured. I think we have to follow the direction we got at that town meeting. We need to have organizations that are working cooperatively together, and I think we need to have some strong leadership from the select board to make sure that that committee that is restructured with a new charge has accountability and has a way that we can sort of have measurable goals so we can move that very important project forward. So that's how I would want to take care of that. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Sabine St. Pierre for the Board of Selectmen candidates. For several months, concerned citizens and residents attending the Select Board's meetings have spoken during the open forum and have posed questions to the Select Board. Most of those questions went unanswered, ignored, or were put off to a future date, and then never answered on those dates either. Would you have treated the residents differently? And if yes, how so? We'll start with Peter Mimo this time.
So I think, we're talking about residents who appear at, say, the public forum section, which is an opportunity, I think, for the public to voice their concerns to the select board. And I don't know that that's necessarily the right time to have direct engagement at that particular point, at least on point by point. I will say, though, that it is important to understand and give an opportunity within the rules and the bounds of the rules of the open forum to have a full understanding, give them the opportunity to certainly express what their concerns are. And I do think that, to the extent that if there's a question that's posed to the select board even during that forum, it at some point it certainly should be addressed. If not directly at that point, then certainly shortly thereafter. I would certainly have that opportunity. If I have the opportunity to be elected to that board, then that's an approach that I would want to take.
Thank you. Kyla McSweeney?
I work for the Department of Early Education and Care, and we have a similar open comment period at our board meetings. And the whole structure of that is just really difficult. There's a lot of rules involved into that and how they can respond to it. However, I do feel, as we've talked about several times tonight, that residents need to be heard, and they need to be addressed. They need to know that their concerns are being addressed. There has to be a forum for that. There has to be a way for them to have that dialogue. I think too many residents of Hopkinton right now are feeling unheard and feeling like their questions are not getting answered, and we need to figure that out.
Thank you. Brian Herr?
It goes a little bit to the open meeting law rules. When we post an agenda for a meeting, we put on there the various topics that we're going to cover in that meeting, and we have to post it 48 hours in advance so that the public is notified, and the public can come in and listen to a specific agenda item if they so choose, or they can watch it on local access TV. So when a resident comes in and sits down and during the public comment and brings up something that may not be on the agenda and are looking for a response to that item that they bring up, and it's not on the agenda, that is a violation of the open meeting law. So there are some challenges there in terms of how we should, structure the meeting so that people can be heard, but also we can't violate open meeting laws because that would be a no-no for the entire community. And it happens in Massachusetts on a regular basis, believe it or not, and you'll hear about it in the news every now and then. But what we can do is when people come in and sit down and they voice their concerns about something, we can take notes, we can speak to the town manager, we can speak to the assistant town manager, and we can ask that we build that into a future agenda. And then if we have, and maybe you don't build one comment into a future agenda for a future meeting, but if 6 people are saying the same thing or 10 people are saying the same thing, now you're starting to hear a little bit of the general will of the community. And the general will of the community is what we should be listening to, what we should be understanding, and what we should be trying to follow and try to lead, the folks through what the general will is. Sometimes the general will could be a little off, and we have to guide them to the general will in a slightly different direction. But we can't ignore the general will of the community, but we have to take steps to follow open meeting law and make sure we get it done in a timely manner too.
Thank you. Joe Clark?
I agree completely with what was said. Like, they're structuring these meetings for a reason, right? Everything can't be answered right away. We've got to stick to kind of the order of the meetings. But with that said, I think the theme here is that people are getting frustrated because they're talking about recurring things, recurring situations that aren't being addressed. And as we look and we move through, as a town, you want to make sure that your voice is heard. So I like Brian's idea, documenting things, because a lot of these things are not one-offs in my experience, especially if you look recently. You've got people coming up talking about the same things with no response and no, really commitment to changing the way they're heard. So as we look to kind of change the process in what I would call future meetings from when someone speaks up or when multiple people speak up, we just need to make sure it's documented and people feel the need that their voice is being heard, because they don't have a lot of opportunities to do that. And I think in general, for a lot of people, addressing the select board in those meetings, it's, for most people in town, it's kind of an intimidating thing. I've heard a lot of people say that. Like, they're getting up there, most of them don't talk in public forums often, so to get up there, build up the courage to do that, their voice should be heard, and so we need to make sure that resonates, and we figure out a way to kind of document that and move forward and capture those things and discuss them at appropriate times.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes.
Excuse me. John Catino, longtime member of the Select Board, Planning Board, Board of Appeals. But this is to the Select Board. I just want to know if the candidates understand the heavy lift that it really is. That it's really not just the 2 hours on TV or what Amy put in to go to some fun events, cultural events that are happening. When I was on there, I was regularly 20 to 30 hours a week, going into Boston, meeting with the governor, meeting with our state rep, our senator, and I was just wondering if they're ready to put in the effort. Well, Brian already knows it because he's already done it for 20 years. But if they're ready to put in that heavy lift that it's going to take to do it right. Because one of the problems that we're having right now, it seems, with our present select board is that it doesn't seem to be going right. And maybe the time hasn't been put in, and we need a fresh voice and a fresh group.
Thank you.
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Yes, we're just going to answer this question first. Okay. Joe Clark?
I think that's a great question. I know for me personally, when I was making this decision the last couple of months to pull papers, first thing I did was reach out to former selectmen, like John himself. My biggest concern was getting into this and, not being able to do the job right. So, like John said, and, other people that have been selectmen before or select board members, they gave me kind of coaching on what the job really looks like. We know the agenda comes out the Thursday before, meetings every other Tuesday. But really, with all the critical things that we're going to be dealing with over the next couple of years, like, there's a lot more that goes outside of that. And, I know for me, it's, that ends up being time away from the family that, I should be spending with my daughters, but I'm willing to make that investment, for this town. I want this to be a town that, just like I was happy to grow up in, come back to, raise a family in. There's been a lack of that. It's kind of pained me the last couple of months. I've talked to two people, completely separate conversations that ended in, and their kids are, just leaving the house. So you're talking like close to empty nesters. And, two people separately mentioned that they were concerned that their kids would, come back to the area. And that just pains me as a longtime resident and someone who takes a ton of pride in this community. So, I know for me personally, I spend a lot of time with former board members, understanding what the job requires, and I know I'm certainly up to the task.
Thank you. Brian Herr?
Yes, I'm keenly aware of the amount of work it takes. Thank you.
Thank you. Kyla McSweeney?
As I said, I've been here since 2007. This is the first, I am on the Cemetery Commission right now. The amount of time Cemetery Commission takes is nominal compared to what a select board position takes, but I haven't been ready to this position because I've been raising a family. But frankly, my kids are starting to get a little older, and I have some more opportunity, more time in my life that I can go and devote to this, as well as working remotely has enabled me to be in Hopkinton more often. I used to leave before the sun up, come sundown. I didn't see much of Hopkinton. Now I'm seeing a lot of Hopkinton, and I'm prepared to do the hard work. I as the others have said, Joe Clark said, I have talked to current select board members, former select board members, and really gotten information about whether the amount of time that they take in doing the research and time to really be briefed on the issues, I think is substantial. And I'm ready to put in that work. Thanks.
Thank you. Peter, Mimo?
And thank you. Echoing Kyla's comments, I now have a son who's now in college now, so there's a little bit of a void now. No more AAU basketball games now, that sort of thing. So now a bit more of a time that's more available to me now. As I said, I've dedicated my career to the public service now, and this is yet another opportunity for me to do so. I've done so far as a member of the Board of Assessors. I'm not going to equate the Board of Assessors to the Board of to the Select Board. However, there is a time commitment there. Commitment that you have to read those very complicated abatement applications. They can be a little bit dry, but you can do it. And you have to be prepared so that when you're facing and having a member of the public who has a very sincere dispute about the assessment of his or her property, you want to be able to at least intelligently engage that member of the public, and I take pride in the fact that we've been able to do so. As a matter of fact, I think Leslie may perhaps even echo this. We've been worked pretty hard the last couple of months. We have a number of abatement applications that have come in, complicated issues, and I've done that preparation in order to do so, and done that preparation, and not afraid of taking on new challenges, and this certainly would be a new challenge. I've made a commitment already this evening to make myself available for office hours. I've made a commitment to do so, to work for the public interest throughout my entire career. When I lived in Northbridge, before you came here to Hopkinton, I was a member of that town's personnel committee. That had a time commitment. I was also a member of that town's town manager search committee. That had a time commitment. And it didn't feel like a time commitment because I enjoy doing the work. When I'm not working in the public interest, I'm volunteering my time to the public. This is what I do. It's in my blood. It's what I do. And I look forward to hopefully having that opportunity to serve as a member of the Select Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Question from Leslie Fakari.
Thank you. This is for everyone who's running for the Select Board. During your opening statements, many of you expressed your concern about the budget, but the town has voted for another new school, and we continue to vote for higher school budgets. This always leaves less for the town employees who are in town hall and for other services. And I served on the personnel committee a long time ago and worked with establishing their compensation and things like that. So I am very curious about your thoughts on addressing this issue within the budget because it recurs a lot.
Thank you. So we'll start with Peter Mimo this time and work backwards.
So I guess, thank you for the question. I guess I suppose the initial response that has to be is that living in Hopkinton, and we know it's an expensive town to live in, and a major reason for that is because we have such high-class, first-class services, including our schools, and I think that in order to continue the prosperity within this town, we need to continue to support those types of services and those types of capital projects that continue to make our town great. I understand there's going to be a budget crunch, and I guess the way that we have to focus of that is looking at how do we sort of manage our money that we are bringing in well. I understand that to the certain extent that we have things like free cash. Where is that coming from? Why is that occurring? Is there a way to sort of tighten our belts in those areas? So we need to take a tougher look at those particular areas. But I don't think we should be sacrificing any services that we are providing. I think that's sort of what's the lifeblood of our community, what makes our community terrific. So that's how I would address that.
Thank you. Kyla McSweeney.
So as I said, we have some tough decisions coming at us. We have a number of different budget items that are coming up for us. We have to do something about the schools. That's why they've been addressed. That's why you see the overwhelming public coming out to support those initiatives when they come up at town meeting. My daughter eats lunch at 10 a.m. in the morning because there's not enough room in the cafeteria. There are kids sitting in hallways receiving their services for special education. We absolutely have things that we need to address. There are other things in town that we would really like to address. But I think we're going to have to make some hard decisions as a town about what is absolutely necessary and what are other things that we might need to put off for a little while until we can get into a better budget situation. I do think we have to look closely at the budget and see where there's areas that we can cut, so other areas that are not receiving enough funding. There's a lot of work to be done with our budget, and I fully support on doing that work.
Thank you. Brian Herr?
So this is the budget. This is the proposed budget for FY25. It's online. You can grab it. Anyone can grab it and download it. As you can see, I've been kind of doing a little work already. You know, just like we're trying to calm the waters in town and dial back the temperature a little bit, or, you know, get everybody to kind of work to respect things harder and be focused on that, I think we also are going to have to calm our spending for the next few years in Hopkinton. We're investing in 2 great schools. Well, we're probably going to invest in the second school here at town meeting in a couple of weeks. So this budget, frankly, is based on that, is going through. So we did the debt service numbers based on that. They did the debt service based on that. The reality is we have a lot of debt service coming at us, which is a huge spike. I mentioned it when I first came up earlier this evening. We're going from $7 million to $17 million in the next 4 fiscal years. That is a huge spike in our debt service. It's going to put a lot of pressure on our bond rating. If our bond rating comes down, our interest rates go up, which means we have to spend more of our operating budget just to pay the debt service, and we could get into a vicious cycle. Interest rates go up, bond rating comes down. Interest rates go up, bond rating comes down. And we could spiral out of control if we're not careful. So we're going to do the new schools, Charles Wood Elementary, and then the Hopkins renovations, $200 million all in. Okay, state money's coming at us, I get it, but it's $200 million, and there's debt service numbers that we haven't even seen yet that we're going to have to cover. While we do that, we have to dial everything else back a little bit, I think. I wouldn't propose that we cut budget services. I would propose that we flatline some budget services for a few years until we get past this the spike, the bubble that we're going to have when we build these great assets for our students and for our town. But between now and then, I think we're going to have to be very, very careful and watch this thing really closely. Thanks.
Thank you. Joe Clark?
I think the key term with this is balance, right? It's the schools have always been a backbone of this community. They're going to continue to do so. Like Brian said, you know, likely the second project is going to get formalized in a few weeks. So, you know, we need to look more closely at these things. And, you know, to me, long term, we have to look at, you know, needs and then wants. We've got to prioritize the needs. You know, I'm very reluctant to talk about cuts. You know, I think, you know, the schools will always be a great part of this town, but, you know, we can't let the other departments suffer with just the focus on the schools. So finding a healthy balance, it's not an easy thing to do. You know, we're going to need a lot of people, you know, looking closely at the budget, looking closely at how we're spending. And like Brian said, you know, for a couple of years, it's going to have to be, you know, much tighter. Again, I'm against the idea of cutting things, you know, because I think we've lost a lot in the last couple of years. We've lost people from this town for a variety of reasons, but, you know, those people are what make this town Hopkinton. And so, you know, we've got to figure out a way to kind of keep what we have, maintain, maybe not grow in some of these areas that people would like to see as much, and just, you know, figure out how to continue supporting the schools and the rest of the town departments.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Full disclosure, I'm a photographer for the Hopkinton Independent, but I'm here as a private citizen. How about our elderly, our senior citizens? You know, this is a good segue into what you've just been talking about, and the crunch and the shortage of funds, or the overspending, if you will. We're being priced. I'm a senior citizen. I've been here for 27 years, and I feel as if I'm getting priced out of the community that I love. I raised my kids here. We had a family, and we love this community. I think we're losing, if we lose our elderly, we're losing the heart and soul, I think, of the community. People who have been here for a long, long time and know about the community. What are you going to do about our senior citizens? And what can you do to help our senior citizens for the select board?
Okay. So we'll start this time with Joe Clark. Don't get comfortable.
Yeah, John, I think you hit on a key issue, right? Affordability in town's a big problem. And I look at that as something that, it's not going to change. We need to figure out how to solve that, because I look, as we talk about schools and the growing town, families coming into town, I know a lot of people that are referring to what you are, they're at a point where they'd love to downsize, right? Hopkinton does not have a lot of opportunities for people to downsize. Most of those opportunities, I look at the 55 plus communities, those are not cheap, right? It's a large investment. In a lot of cases, you've got people that have been in a single family home for 20, 30 years, raised a family in it, and now their options are, I want to downsize, I want to stay in town, but it doesn't make sense financially. So they're staying in their single family homes, which frankly is a challenge. I hope that doesn't impact the growth of our children population, right? Because you got a lot of people that would be looking for those types of single family homes, and those are tough to come by. I know a lot of people, my generation, challenged with getting into Hopkinton, would love to be in Hopkinton, would love to take advantage of the town, the schools. It's not easy. So while I don't have a direct answer for you tonight, John, I think it's certainly something that we need to solve, because I wholeheartedly agree that the seniors of this community are part of that charm in the heart of Hopkinton that I referred to earlier in the night. And, we start to lose that, we start to lose the identity of the town. So I can commit to just looking closer at it. I wish I had answers for you tonight, but we can certainly commit to looking at it.
Thank you. Brian Herr?
Thanks for the question, John. There is a home rule petition before town meeting this year talking about seniors and a tax abatement for the school projects. So for this 150 million or whatever we're on the hook for, 130 million or so all in, if that passes and it goes to the legislature and the legislature passes it, because it's a home rule petition and we can't just do it here, we have to have the Attorney General and the legislature involved in it. I think that would go a long way in helping the seniors stay in town. It's already very expensive for the seniors in town. To throw another 130 million, into the mix for them to cover on their tax bills, I think is unfair for the schools. And the parents of Hopkinton, I think, have demonstrated a willingness to pay for the schools, and I think we'll continue with that. But I'd like to see that home rule petition pass at town meeting and then go to the legislature, and then those relationships we talked about earlier this evening, contacting Senator Spilka, contacting James Arena, contacting the governor's office, and asking for their support of that home rule petition will help the seniors. Thanks.
Thank you. Kyla McSweeney?
So glad that candidate Herr brought up the home rule position, because that is exactly what I was going to talk to. I've had a lot of conversations with seniors in town who are extremely concerned about staying in town and extremely concerned about affording the taxes. Frankly, there's also other residents that aren't seniors that are having trouble affording the taxes and staying in town as well. And I think we need to be very cognizant of that. And as much as I would love all the great things in town and spending all our money in the budget for that, as I said, I think we need to make some hard choices and kind of watch our spending, because we really need those seniors as part of our community. I serve on committees with them. They're very vibrant and very important to our town.
Thank you. Peter Mimo?
Thank you for the question. When I first moved into Hopkinton, we actually moved into Sanctuary Lane, which is primarily an over 55 community, and we're actually an outlier. We're the lone sort of single resident there, and we were welcomed with open arms. It was a very warm, wonderful community to be a part of. And so, I don't have a direct answer necessarily about it. It's a very expensive town to live in. We all know that. I can certainly, I fully support the home rule petition that we're going to face and have an opportunity to vote for on May the 6th at the town meeting. And I can point to that. As a member of the Board of Assessors, we've approved. I think the last fiscal year we had about 72 exemptions that we approved, and I understand it's limited, but we've done that. We've done other things also to help improve the ability for seniors to obtain either deferments to their taxes, or also to obtain either greater sort of tax relief as well. And we've done a few of those things since I've been on the Board of Assessors as well. I suppose as a member of the Select Board, I want to continue to work with the Board of Assessors to try to come up with other ideas to do that, other targeted sort of ways to sort of help reduce that tax liability if we can. for seniors and those who are experiencing financial hardship, but veterans, that and along those lines. It's an expensive town to live in, and it comes with a price, but it should not price out the people who are really sort of, as you put it, the sort of the lifeblood of our community. I don't want to see any of my neighbors from Sanctuary Lane move out because of that. That would be heartbreaking. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes. Can you state your name and address, please?
Glenn Dawson, 40 Sanctuary Lane.
Thank you.
This question's for the select board candidates. What specific plans would you consider to intelligently expand our commercial tax base by encouraging commercial development that would be of service to the community and take some pressure off the residential tax base? Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Mimo, you're on.
Thank you, Glenn. It's good to see you this evening, too. So I had the opportunity, actually, about a month ago, I attended there's a Mass Bio conference that celebrated the fact that Hopkinton now has platinum status along our South Street corridor. We're now an optimal community to welcome in more biotech communities, including Rosalind CT as being one of those chief companies that is out there to do that sort of thing. And they noted that, the cooperation with the select board, having tax increment financing agreements has been a big boon to help them sort of, continue to do business within the town. I think that we must continue to sort of work off of that. And that's one way in order to help sort of revive the South Street corridor. I think that if we really need to sort of talk about sort of trying to work with, I note that within Town Hall, we have an economic opportunity group that's sort of working to try to attract more business into town. And I note that when I had an opportunity to talk to some of those stakeholders, that it was, we need to help get the word out. Market Hopkinton, it's a great place to do business. So we need to get the word out, do a better job getting that word out there to attract more business in here. And show a willingness to that we're going to work with them in terms of tax increment financing agreements and along those lines. So.
Kyle McSweeney.
I agree. I think we have a lot of opportunities within town to attract more businesses. You can see the vacant storefronts. If they were full, that would do a little bit of helping. My husband owns a small business in town, so we are well aware of opportunities and how great it is to do business in town. The Southeast corridor is really essential to the vitality in helping our town. I don't know if I want to learn more about this, about how we can start to reduce taxes by bringing optimizing business in town. I'm not sure that all of these will have a great effect on our residential property taxes. But I do think that there are ways that we can explore. We need to think out of the box. We need to really do some homework on this, on these different endeavors.
Thank you. Brian Herr?
There are some empty storefronts in the center of town, and there are obviously some empty buildings on South Street. And I do think the corridor project, when done, and like everybody else, I'm fed up with it. I'd like it done. When the corridor project's done, I think that will enhance our downtown economic vibrancy. South Street is a little bit different matter. When you serve on a select board, you're not always on camera doing the meetings and talking about some of the fun things or new schools or new libraries, things like that. I spent about a year working on the sewer pipe from South Street to Milford, to get sewer from South Street to Milford to enhance what we could do on South Street for development work. So there's some mundane things that we have to do too to help the infrastructure of the community. We did put that in place probably about 10 years ago now when Lonza first came in a while back. And TIFs were included in that too, Peter, which is a really good idea. But the challenge is making sure that the infrastructure is in place. And then the other challenge is, and Kyle alluded to it, is we have to recognize that if we brought in 100 businesses and they all were going to spend 30 grand a year or give us 30 grand a year in taxes, okay? Unfortunately, that will barely move your residential tax rate because there's 5,000 homes, and the homes are valued at a very high rate. So, you know, we talk about a dual tax rate for businesses and residential on an annual basis, and we look at the numbers, and if we put the big burden on the businesses, like charge them another 20 or 30%, most people's tax bill would go down about $6. So it really doesn't move the needle a lot. We should bring more commercial business to Hopkinton. We should maximize that sewer pipe we put in on South Street, and we should fill our stores downtown. But we shouldn't be naive about what that's going to do for our tax bill. The tax bill in Hopkinton, because of the number of residences, will always be under pressure, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Clark?
I think both Brian and Peter addressed it really well. You know, we look, you know, the situation's really tough, right? I think commercial represents about 16% of our tax base, right, in town. And if you look at, you know, our zoning in town, we don't have a lot of land left for new commercial businesses. So we got to take advantage of what we have, right? You know, I think Brian hit it really well with the numbers. Main Street is not going to make the difference filling those shops, right? The platinum certification that Peter mentioned, that is an awesome thing. A lot of people put a lot of effort into town. So I think now we're at a point where, you know, it's great, we've got it. We can't just kind of sit back and let that happen. You know, I don't think people are just going to come out to Hopkinton. We've got to figure out a way as select board members to proactively go out there and sell South Street, you know, get new businesses in there. Because again, to echo what Brian said, you know, we can't just do this with, you know, small increases in small businesses. It's got to be big corporations filling up South Street that can actually make an impact. You know, I don't think we can expect to easily move that tax percentage from 16 to 20%. It would be great if we could, but there's a lot of work that has to go there. I do think all those little shops, that makes a difference, right? If you look at, you know, companies coming in, they want to see a town that's vibrant, that's full of business, full of activity, that people like working in. Select Board is front and center for making this an easy place to come and operate and own a business.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm Cheryl Harrow. I am bringing a question in from my dear wife. She wants to know, this is for the Select Board, your suggestions and solutions for our variety of water issues, whether it be quantity or quality.
Thank you. Joe Clark?
I think we've seen a couple opportunities. I think, you know, the most prominent is the MWRA, right? You know, how we figuring out how to tie into that. It was addressed, or it was brought up, you know, I think, what, a decade ago? Nothing was done with it. You know, now we're in a situation where, you know, we have to do something. Costs are, you know, exponentially larger than what they were when it was first reviewed. Again, I think we've all been in agreement that, you know, as we look ahead over the next couple of years, we've got to be very diligent about our spending. But we're talking about our town's drinking water. Like, this is an absolute priority for the town to figure out, you know, for our families. You know, they need to have safe drinking water. I think, you know, any options on the table, like, I don't have a ton of new ones, Ed. I wish I did for you. But I think it's something that needs to be front and center for all of our decisions. You know, it's, you know, sometimes it's taking the back burner. We've got a lot of big things to talk about. We can't lose focus on this one. So I'm curious to explore the MWRA one, you know, working through Southborough, because I think you touched on it, the two things, quality and quantity, right? MWRA represents that. I think their testing has been great over the years. There's no volume issues from there. So to me, that's the first place to look. Obviously, we can't just write blank checks and go do that, but we need to look closely at it.
Thank you. Brian Herr?
Ed, please thank your wife for the question. The Water Enterprise Fund projected or proposed for next year today, there's a cut of $136,000 in the expense line, Department 450. That doesn't make sense to me, just going through this here in the last couple of weeks. I wasn't in on the deliberations as to how that number came to be, but why would we be cutting our expense line when we have a situation with the PFAS in town? I think there's a disconnect there somewhere. Maybe it's because they didn't have something appropriated or they didn't have it lined up, so they had to cut that budget. But I would have thought, and this is, well, I'll get to the second half of my answer here in a second, I would have thought that we would try to be proactively figuring out what else we can do to improve the water quality and the safety in Hopkinton. So to that end, in the past, Hopkinton had the Water and Sewer Commission board. It was a separate board. And at some point along the way, before I got elected in 2007, it was disbanded. And the water and sewer funds came under the purview and control of the Board of Selectmen at the time, now the Select Board. I would propose that we consider bringing that back. That could be a town charter issue. It could be something that we'd have to go for perhaps for another home rule petition to the state. But I don't think, given everything that we have in front of us as now a $125 million business operation with 19 or 20,000 residents, that the Select Board can do everything. And I think delegating that back to a Water and Sewer Commission or a DPW board or something along those lines that we'll study and figure out, I think would go a long way in shining the light back on our water safety and on our sewer capacity and things of that nature that could help us all kind of move forward. Again, kind of mundane stuff, but that's part of the job, is doing these sorts of things. And I do think looking into a DPW commission or a water and sewer commission, something like that would make sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Kyla McSweeney, please.
So I don't have a lot of answers. I want to learn some more. I want to talk to more people. I want to explore the issue. I'm just beginning to study this different issue. I think, as Mr. Hurst said, he spent a lot of time on sewer pipes in his last time on Select Board. I think we're going to spend a lot of time on water pipes coming forward in the next few years in our Select Board. From what I've been reading, there's lots of intricacies with this. There's some barriers that we have to connecting to the MWRA, and there's a lot involved in that. I want to spend more time talking to experts that really understand these problems and how we're going to come to solutions, because we need to fix this. You know, as Joe said, this is integral to our community. I mean, it's not, we can't have the best schools if we don't have good water for our citizens.
Thank you. Peter Mimo.
Thank you. I think that I'm more or less going to echo an awful lot we already heard, but I do think that a connection to the MWRA, that's going to be critical for both in terms of volume and also in terms of quality. I think that we're a growing town. We continue to grow. Those problems are only going to continue to exacerbate themselves unless we address it. You know, other short-term, short gap solutions in the meantime. You know, I do know we're having filtration systems put onto the well 6. You know, that's going to help address or remediate, I suppose. I hope the PFAS issue with respect to our current wells. There are other untapped wells in our town. Are those possibly? I'll keep an open mind about that as a way to try to perhaps assuage some of the demand. But you know, those are going to come with their challenges as well. I mean, what's the PFAS levels in those wells? So that there are other sort of, you know, other possible contaminants in those as well. But, you know, there are opportunities perhaps in town to take a look at that. But I do think that, you know, the MWRA connection, I think, is key to that. And we need to make sure that we're on the right track to sort of make sure those connections are happening in a way that doesn't sort of cost us, you know, a small fortune or even beyond a small fortune, is done in a way that's trying to move us forward on that particular issue. I think that is key in order to address those concerns.
Thank you. Ashley?
Ashley Fogg, 5 Cross Street. I just want to say, first of all, thank you for standing up here and answering all these questions. I've personally been, obviously, where you've been, and it's a tough spot to be at. You never know what's going to be thrown at you, as much as you probably have all prepared. So thank you for coming and being here tonight and putting yourself forward. I guess my question is, and I'm kind of surprised that no one's asked it yet. Everyone understands what's been going on in the town the last several months with regards to Tim Brennan. It's been a huge issue, right? Some people talked about in certain questions about coming before the Select Board and not being heard, and that has been probably the biggest issue in the last several months. I guess my question is, as a Select Board member, I know you can't go back and be on the Select Board January through April, but if you were, what would you have done differently had you been on the Select Board, and how do you plan to move forward? I know that there is an agenda item on town meeting regarding Tim Brennan, and Mr. Hare talked about the will of the people, and especially when it comes to the Trails Committee, right? And the Select Board hasn't done what the will of the people is. So what happens if we vote to reinstate him? How are you guys going to respond to that, and what would you have done differently in the last several months in regards to Tim Brennan?
Thank you. This time we'll start with Peter Memo.
Thank you. So it's probably not surprising, given my background has been, I've been an attorney now with the Commonwealth now for about 20 years. Most of my time has been defending and working with management and being a labor and employment attorney. So it probably should come as no surprise that I have a deep respect for the labor arbitration dispute resolution process. The town and the union representing Mr. Brennan negotiated a collective bargaining agreement. And that collective bargaining agreement provides for and requires that that dispute is resolved through that process. And so it should come as no surprise, I think, that I have a tremendous amount of respect for that process, and that's where that labor dispute belongs. So to the extent that we're talking about a particular town meeting article to reinstate an employee, I must say that, and I have no problem saying this, that I as a member of town, as a voter at town meeting, I intend to vote that down. I think that that dispute belongs in a labor arbitration dispute process. I don't believe that personnel decisions should be made at town meeting. Imagine the idea of we're going to decide whether or not to hire people at town meeting, fire people at town meeting, promote people at town meeting. That's not what the process is. That's not what the town negotiated. That's not what the union representing Mr. Brennan negotiated. And that's where that dispute belongs. That being said, as a member of the select board, you do have an opportunity. You are speaking for the town, and you are also essentially the employer when it comes to the police chief. And you do have an opportunity there through the collective bargaining agreement to resolve that grievance through the collective bargaining agreement. It's this final step before it gets to arbitration. So, I can't profess to say that I know all the facts and circumstances of that particular issue. I do know what I've read. But I'm not going to pretend to think, and I don't think anyone really could pretend to think that they know everything about that particular issue. I will pledge this, that I will give a fresh set of eyes to that issue, and that when given an opportunity to look at that issue again, and if I think that the town is on a course that it shouldn't be on, I will keep an open mind about that. We do have an opportunity before an arbitration to resolve it if we can. If that's appropriate and it's in the town's best interest, then I will take a look at that and do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Kyla McSweeney, please.
I'm also a lawyer. I have to agree with Peter that I don't believe that we should be commenting right now on something that's open and active in an arbitration situation. If asked what I would do differently or what I would have done if I were on the select board at that time, I really think it's important, as we've talked about, to do the homework and to make sure that you've heard the entirety of the situations. And that includes talking to residents as much as possible. None of us were there during their deliberations, during their closed meeting. So we don't know what went on to those conversations and what they were able to consider during that time. But as a select board member, if a similar situation came up, that was how I would approach it.
Thank you. Brian Herr.
Over the years, unfortunately, we've had other police officer terminations in Hopkinton while I served on the board. Those situations and those discussions with attorneys present always took place in executive session. This situation, in my view, never should have left executive session. It should have been resolved in executive session. Unfortunately, I don't think currently, I don't think our mindset is to have a solutions-based management philosophy. I think we've gotten to a point now in Hopkinton with some of the leadership that we have a blame-based management philosophy, and blame-based management doesn't work. I'm a business person. I've been doing it for a long time, 40 years, I can't believe, but it's true. And blame-based management doesn't work. So I think we kind of got into that, and my gut tells me, even though I was not in those executive sessions, the reason it came out of executive session and went to the Loudermill hearing is because it was not a solutions-based process. If we are solutions-based oriented, I think we could have resolved this, but it always should have stayed in executive session, in my opinion. All personnel decisions should be in executive session like this. It's not fair to bring it out into the public for anybody. That said, the town meeting article that's proposed is an interesting one. I think the town council has to weigh in on that before we even get into it at town meeting to make sure it's in order. I'm not sure if it is or not. If it is in order and the residents go forward and they deliberate that question in town meeting, I'm going to sit there and listen very carefully. And then if I'm elected, if I'm fortunate enough to be returned to the board, Again, we'll take that general will of the community back to the select board meeting room and we'll have a conversation around it. But I think that there's a lot of other mitigating, not mitigating, but other circumstances here that we'll have to sort through as well. But I do believe in listening to the general will of the community. I do believe in keeping all personnel decisions in executive session. And I do believe that there's got to be a solution out here. We just haven't found it yet. We should keep after that solution. Thanks.
Thank you. Joe Clark, please.
This is a tough situation, right? I look at it from the new, I think the question was about the new article proposed. I agree. My understanding is things are under arbitration, so it kind of makes it really challenging for the select board to weigh in now. But I think the intention of the question was really going back to the previous one. And it's a really tough situation. I'm very familiar with how departments like that, police, fire, first responders, run. And I think if you go back even further, like this is a situation that, obviously, the select board's going to be involved, but in a public forum, it's really challenging. I think police work, especially if you look at the last couple of years, is not black and white. There has not been public support for the police, in this town, in the nation. It's a disappointing thing to see. One of the things I wish we had the opportunity back then, to just handle it as, a human problem, right? I talk about things not being black and white in police work. This was a very gray situation. We had a person that was in a tough spot in their role. I think they tried to do the best that they could. I think did they break policy? I think they would admit that, right? But it's really tough for a select board to make the determination when at least from my opinion, things should run through the chain of command in a department because if you look at a situation where, and I believe with the police department, contractually we don't have a strong chief clause in town, that limits the chief's ability to control the department, control, suspensions or, policy enforcement. And the importance there is the chief needs to be able to make a decision, and that's going to kind of set the tone for future, situations that come up and issues. So it's a really challenging thing. I think overall, though, the select board had an opportunity to hear, that will of the town with the outspoken meeting, and they chose not to act. So that was disappointing for me to see.
Thank you. This question is from Amy Groves, 2 College Street. This is for the select board candidates. Did you support the downtown corridor project in 2018 and 19? Has your opinion changed? And can anything be done about the bike lane? Joe, I should have just kept you up here.
Great question. I think like most people, we absolutely supported that project back in 2018, 2019. No one's happy with the result of it, right? There's, the continued delays. We've heard, going back to the fall, we'll start back up in the spring with no commitment from Eversource around the supply chain issues. It's extremely frustrating. I think that's something as a select board, we need to solve right away. Again, I go back to the relationship with Eversource. They're a big piece of what goes on at the LNG facility off Wilson Street. So I think we're entitled to a different conversation, that some towns may not have. We have to figure out how to force that as the select board and as a town that has such a vested interest in Eversource. I think the last part with the bike lanes, I personally, not a fan. I think a lot of people in town, not a fan of it. I do believe that part of that came from requirements for state funding. So I think there's, challenges and limitations around what we can do in the short term to change those. Long term, I'm open to all suggestions once we kind of pass those points.
Thank you. Brian Hurt, please.
Yes, Amy, I was a big supporter of the Downtown Corridor Project and still am. It is not done, folks. I live downtown. It's a pain in the butt. It's ugly. It looks ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. All those different descriptions apply, and I think they're all true right now. It's going to be great when it's done. It's going to be great. There's no brick inlays right now. The entire bike path gets brick inlays. So you're going to know what it is once the brick inlays go in between the sidewalk, between the road surface, there's the granite curb, and then the brick inlays, and then the bike path. There'll be a yellow line down the entire bike path. There'll be bikes painted on the pavement to say it's a bike path, it's not a car path or whatever else people are doing. There's gonna be street trees everywhere in the corridor. There's gonna be the flower pots that are all shoved onto the common right now, spread out all over the corridor. It's gonna look fabulous when it's done. The wires are going underground. It's gonna look fabulous when it's done. It's a real pain in the backside right now. My house has been covered in dust for 3 years because of the corridor project. So I get it, and I get the frustration, and I'm frustrated too. I'll tell you this though, I'm in the solar development business I mentioned earlier today. We do about 100 to 120 projects a year, commercial, larger scale solar development work. We buy about 200 to 240 transformers a year. We used to buy transformers and they'd show up 6 to 8 weeks later, maybe 12 weeks if it was a high-tech transformer. Now we take the word week away and put month in its place. Now we buy these transformers and we're waiting a year and a half for some of these transformers. So it's a thing with Eversource, I get it, and I think they are doling out some of our transformers to storm duty issues around the state, and that's why I want to go meet with Senator Spilka about that. But you know, transformers, it's a supply chain thing that happened in the pandemic, and it's going to continue for a while. But I'm a big believer in this project. When it's done, it's going to be awesome. Hang in there. I feel your pain. Thank you.
Thank you. Kyla McSweeney, please.
I did vote for the project when it was first proposed, and I do believe it hasn't come to fruition the way that we all expected. People are very frustrated about the way the bike trail looks at this time. I do hope it comes to look like Mr. Herr is promising us. I can say that you often see me jogging very early in the morning. You can stop by and say hi on the bike lane because it's very nice for joggers in the morning. But yes, I do think we need to make sure that it is completed, it's completed well. As I said before, I just got done building a house, and let me tell you about supply chain issues. My house took 3 years to build. It's real, and I had my own problems with Eversource, and I'm interested in getting down to the what's going on with that problem. We have a lot of work to do still. It's not over. We like to hear from residents to hear more about how it can be improved and how it can be benefited. Thanks.
Thank you. Peter Mimo.
Yep, thank you. So I don't particularly remember voting for it at town meeting, but I'm sure that I did because I very usually enthusiastically vote for capital projects to help improve our town. The promise is to help improve traffic, to help increase parking spaces, and also just improve the overall, to accommodate the growth of our town. And so I do hope that that's precisely what we're going to get to that point, as Brian had mentioned. As far as what can we do in the interim, I don't have particular answers for that. You know, other ways that we can sort of assuage some of the negative effects of it. Can we partner up again with Mass DOT? Can they sort of give us some assistance with that area? I don't know. Those might be some things that might be on the table for that. But you know, I do believe that we're converting and we're becoming a larger town. And we do need to address that, and I think that the Downtown Corridor Project is at least an attempt to do that, and I think we're moving our way towards that. I certainly hope that is the case. So,
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Ed Harrow. Firstly, I hope you all appreciate that I did not bring up bike lanes.
thank you, Ed.
But I want to take up a little bit more from what Joe brought up about the departures we've had from town. In 2021, we started an outflow of personnel from the police department. 11 people plus 1 dog. We've had more people leave from town hall. And never have I heard any real public discussion as to the whys and the wherefores and what we're going to do about it.
We'll start with Peter Mimo.
I suppose I would start off by pointing out I do think that we've done, at least in terms of a town, we've done a good job in terms of replacing a number of these vacancies. I think that we've put in particular, with our finance team now, it seems to be in a much better place. I think that I had an opportunity to attend a select board meeting where she was introduced and talked about building redundancies within the department so people aren't working in silos, so that if there's a task that one person was typically just associated with, now if that person's not available, another person can pick up the task. We're doing a better job of that sort of thing. And I do note that we've had a number of other hires within the police department recently, and promotions are being moved along. So I do think that it seems like we're moving in the right direction. I'd like to sort of continue to focus on that. As far as the why, how we got to that particular point, my experience has been, at least that, given the work that I've done in labor and employment, that it's not a black and white issue. It's going to be a myriad of reasons as to why there's going to be a turnover within any particular staffing, retirements, people are dissatisfied, they find better opportunities in other communities. And I think that Hopkinton's not immune to any of that. And I think that we saw that, particularly with the police department as well. I think that it becomes a question of, can we take a look at things that are our policies? Is our compensation up to speed? Is it a better place to work in terms of are paying our employees enough? Do they have the right sort of fringe benefits to sort of want to attract them and keep them within our town? These are some of the things we can look at. I do note we'll have an opportunity, if elected on the select board, we have a number of other collective bargaining agreements coming up for negotiation. Maybe we can take a hard look at that to see if there are ways to continue to attract and retain some of our talent within town. If I've learned nothing as being a member of the Board of Assessors, is that we have a very professional staff between our principal assessor and our deputy assessor. They're wonderful people to work for, and it's very clear that they're highly skilled, and that kind of talent needs to be retained and kept within town hall. And I'm very proud to work with them. And so I have no more time, but we need to continue to work along those lines. And so, thank you.
Thank you. Kyla McSweeney.
I'm going to go back to my opening statement where I believe that we, as a select board, if I am elected, should spend time talking to the employees in town. And during the select board meeting a few weeks ago, the human resources director mentioned that she wants to start doing, instead of exit interviews, she wants to do in-place interviews with employees, and I fully support that. And I do believe the select board should be a part of that. I think we need to hear from them. What's going good with your job? What's not going good with your job? What can we do better for you? Because we work with them to make our town a great place. And I do agree with Peter. We have many very committed and very professional employees. During the Cemetery Commission, I've had the great opportunity to work with the Department of Public Works, and those men and women are amazing and doing really hard work in all sorts of weather here in Hopkinton. We have wonderful employees in every department that we need to retain, and we need to attract more great employees.
Thank you. Brian Herr.
In any organization, the organization takes on the personality of its leadership. That's one of the basic principles of leadership. You read any book, any MBA program will teach you that. And when the select board has its moments of instability, that's going to filter down. And over the last couple of years, we've had several moments of instability on the select board. And I think that has filtered down. And specifically with the police department, there were some concerns about, how the select board would want to manage or change the policing, process in Hopkinton. We're the #1 safest community in America several years in a row, but we're going to change the policing in Hopkinton. Why? So the instability, I think, that was created at the board level filtered down into the organization. You can see that with our town manager. The town manager, I was on the committee that hired the town manager, Mr. Kamalo. He's our second town manager. And he's done a fabulous job. He's annoyed a few people along the way, but that's because he's doing his job. If you don't annoy some people every now and then, you're not doing your job if you're the town manager. But anyway, his leaving is creating instability. Right? His leaving is creating instability. So that's permeating further down into the organization. And I think that if we can get back to a self-governing process in Hopkinton built on respect, as we talked about earlier, and built on competence, and frankly, in my case, if we have the stability of my experience back on the board, you guys make that call, I think we can level set and rebuild the team going forward again. So I'm very optimistic about what we can do for our employees going forward. We have a fabulous group of people. I've met hundreds of these people over the years, and they're just fabulous people. They're dedicated people. They work hard. This town looks awesome all the time. Police, fire, DPW, senior center, the library people, everybody does a great job. I'm really proud to be part of this process. But we got to take care of our employees, and we got to have leadership to create stability for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Clark?
As I mentioned at the start of tonight, like this is a personal issue for me. I have a tremendous amount of pride in the people that have worked and served for this town, and for me, it starts. Brian just alluded to it with leadership. Do we have leaders or managers in department head positions? Right. We talked about both town hall and the police department. I think we need to look at those, and while Brian alluded to it as, I forget how you mentioned it, but basically we have like a gap right now with the town manager leaving. I see that as an opportunity, an opportunity to kind of fill that with, the right person that can build confidence back in town hall. I know for a fact people have left because of the way some of these departments have been run. If you think about municipal positions in general, I work in the tech sector. I have people leave all the time. Every year we lose a bunch of people. They go to a competitor. They make a lot more money. They go for a few years. Sometimes they come back. Sometimes they don't. Municipal employees, it is not the same thing. There is not much incentive for them to leave and go next door. I think about the police department, right? They might be able to go next door to a neighboring town and make a little bit more money. But oftentimes it puts them at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to promotions and stuff. So for people to be leaving at the rate that, Ed referred to, something was very wrong here, right? It's not just one thing. It's not natural. I think, we're filling positions, but just because we're filling open positions in an economy like we have doesn't mean we have the right people in place. We've lost a lot of people that were the heart and soul of this town. So we need to make sure moving forward that we have department heads in place that are going to lead the town. Not every department is hemorrhaging employees. So as the select board specifically, if you look at the town manager position, that is the first and most important. And then we also need to make sure that the current leaders that we have in town are the right people. I love Kyla's idea of exit interviews. That should be mandatory, right? We need to know why people are leaving, document it, and make sure we fix it moving forward.
Thank you. You might as well stay up there, Joe. This is from Mike Terosian from 1 Colonial Avenue. Hayden Row school traffic is bad and will get worse with another school. Can the select board get involved with the traffic? Because it just doesn't affect the schools. It affects the entire town.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I know Mike knows me well. I'm not going to have an opinion specifically on traffic or any advice, but I think we need to, the select board specifically needs to work with the schools, understand what that goes through. I personally just had, the orientation night for parents for the new marathon students going in the fall. And so I looked at that school and they had a very, distinct, strategy around how they bring school buses in, how they bring parents in and drop kids off. It was great. With building another school in that same area, we need to make sure that those plans are already thought about because, just the volume alone. And I live right off of Hayden Row in one of the neighborhoods. So, going to daycare each day for drop-offs, I live this personally. It's flip of a coin. Am I going left down Hayden Row or am I, jumping, going right and heading down Granite and Lumber Street? And, some days it takes a long time either way. So while I don't have any answers specifically for that, it's something that the select board and town needs to take very seriously because it's not going to get any better if we don't.
Thank you. Brian Herr?
I live pretty close to the Common on Hayden Row Street, and I do have to time my mornings sometimes as to which way I go, depending on if I'm going 495 north, south, going to the office, what have you, based on the school traffic. The new school coming in a little bit further down is going to definitely add to the challenge. Obviously, I would assume they're going to be putting in, and I don't know a lot about this topic, to be honest with you, but I have to assume they're going to be putting in a turning lane as part of the enhancements on Hayden Row Street itself to the new school. But I also heard where they're going to be queuing up the traffic, big loop in back behind, Marathon, back to the right there, that should hopefully, that's what I heard at town meeting, I paid attention. Hopefully, they're going to be, queuing that up in there, and it's not going to be out on Hayden Row Street. But we shall see. Right, so I'm not convinced we're done talking about traffic on Hayden Row and the schools and the hours. The timing is a big piece of it too. Before Marathon went in, I could leave my house and I could get somewhere at 8:05 because the high school was already in session and the middle school was in session. But now they put a Marathon in there a couple years ago, and now it's up to 9 o'clock. It causes some confusion for me and delays. So it's something we have to consider. I don't have an answer for you this evening, unfortunately, but I do think that the select board will play a part in that process. Thank you.
Thank you. Kyla McSweeney?
I attended the forums for the proposals for the new Elmwood School, and they addressed this significantly within those forums about how they're working on traffic calming in the area, how they thought of that about bringing in the new school, and how they're going to do the queuing, as Mr. Hurd just explained. It's a huge issue, not just on Hayden Row, but in downtown. If you're coming off Wood Street, if you're coming down Main Street, I live on Ash Street, try and take a left onto Main Street. Traffic is a big problem. It's part of our growing community, and I think it's something that is new that we're getting used to. When I first moved here, I didn't have any trouble getting up Wood onto Main Street. I used to live over in Woodville. I think we're going to have a lot of conversations about traffic in the upcoming years, and I think we need some good solutions and need to talk to some people that know a lot more about traffic than I do.
Thank you. Peter Mimo?
Thank goodness for remote work. No, the traffic issues within the town are clearly becoming an enormous issue. Trying to take a left onto Pleasant Street is in itself a particular adventure as well. We need to look into more traffic mitigation measures. Do I have answers for this? No, I don't. But I do think that what we need to do is we need to work with our partners within who can help with us in terms of traffic mitigation efforts. Can we work with, I know that Mass DOT, for instance, has a number of traffic studies that can help us. Perhaps that might be some method of trying to help us sort of mitigate and learn more about other possibilities or opportunities within town to sort of do so. Sounds like we're sort of trying to work towards that with the queuing that has been discussed already associated with the schools. But the key, it seems to here, is to sort of is to learn more from those who are more attuned to this issue, more so than I am, and try to do our very best to try to mitigate these traffic issues, because clearly traffic has it's becoming worse, and that'll be an issue that we're going to need to consider and address. Thanks.
Thank you. I assume that's it for the questions. Oh, one more.
Hi, I'm Nancy Draw, and I live at 13 Davis Road. I am a member of the newly formed Commission on Disability, and there are 7 of members on this committee that are amazing, and most of us have some sort of disability, whether it be, it's not always something you can see like physical. There are members who have sight impairment, hearing impairment, or they might have a parent or a member of the family who has a disability. So we are all working really hard at many, many projects in this town that need improvement to help any kind of disability that people have. And there's a lot of issues, and we can only do so many things at one time. But what I would like to know is, besides, I could give you the list of what I have or what we have, but what I would like to know is, what do you, any of you, whether it be the select board or the school committee or the planning board, what kind of issues do you see in the town that could be improved by us working really hard to make Hopkinton a handicapped accessible town and more friendly for the handicapped people?
So who would you like to address it to?
Can we start with the select board?
Select board, sure. Peter, back up.
So as you know, where I work now, we enforce our state's anti-discrimination laws. So we work with reasonable accommodations and in assisting those who are disabled and make sure they have full equal opportunity to access. I had an opportunity actually to sit and observe your very first inaugural meeting of the Disability Commission. And, you know, you mentioned a number of areas where there's questions about accessibility to some of our public buildings, a police station, fire station. I think there were some questions you had raised during the course of that discussion, and that raised a concern with me. That would be something I think the Select Board would be able to address directly. In terms of, you know, making sure that Hopkinton is a you know, handicapped accessible, making sure that, you know, that those people who can have full access or equal access to our businesses. It's an opportunity to work with our businesses to raise awareness, and I think that that's something that your committee can certainly do, something that can work with us and partner with us in order to do so. And I highly suspect, that the businesses in our town want to make sure that they're accessible. They want to do business, and I think that's a question of raising awareness and sort of partnering with them to sort of make sure that, you know, what it is that they can do to provide reasonable accommodations, assure accessibility, which is an important goal and must be attained, I think, if we're going to have a fully accessible town in Hopkinton, and we can do that, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Kyla McSweeney, please.
This is an issue that's near and dear to my heart. I've spent my career in education, and a lot of that has been involved in special education as well. Our school systems are doing a concerted effort at special education, and I think that needs including awareness and education in this area, and I think that needs to continue throughout our whole experience in Hopkinton, not just for our youngest citizens, but for all of our citizens in Hopkinton. I think it would be great if the Select Board and the Disability Commission would work together to identify ways in which we can make Hopkinton more accessible and more attractive to those with disabilities.
Thank you. Brian Herr?
So in any business enterprise, and we are a $125 million business enterprise here in Hopkinton, it's always good to follow the money. If you want to know what's going on, follow the money and you can figure it out, or you can get pretty close to figuring it out. So Nancy asked a great question, and I'm looking at budget items or budget lines 511, 541, 542, and 543. 543 is Veteran Services, 542 Youth and Family Services, 541 Senior Center, and 511 Health Services, meaning the Board of Health Work. I don't see the Disability Commission on Disability here. So the first thing the Select Board can do is figure out where the funding is for you, for the work that you need to do. And I think it's important work. I've got some family members in situations similar, and I think that we have to support that type of activity as a community. But we got to follow the money, and I don't see it here in proposed budget for FY25. So that would be my first question as a Select Board member on this particular topic is, where's the cash? We're going to need some money to fund the entity, so we want to make sure that that gets in here. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Clark?
Hi, Nancy. I apologize. I'm not like fully up to speed on all these issues and what the work that's been done. You know, I look forward to learning more about it. I think it's certainly something that's important to the town.
One example is for the hearing, for the sight impaired, actually, and the hearing impaired at the town meetings. We now have, what do you call it, on the, closed caption
Yep.
on the screen, so that anyone who is hearing impaired can actually read what's going on. And we also have a sign language interpreter. So those are two things that really have helped the community in the past, which we never had before. So there's many other, so that's one of the things that we worked on. And now we are working a lot of physical, for a lot of buildings in town that the physically impaired cannot get into. And there's trees in the middle of the sidewalks that even people who aren't disabled can't push their baby carriages through. So things like that, and also the school, you know, the school committee, like special ed, things that like that, who we can help and work on. So there's many items that issues in the town, not just for physical disabilities, but one of the issues is also the library with the ramp and the that's a big deal with the handrail. It doesn't have the handrail, so that's something that we need to be working on. That's an issue right now. So.
Yeah, I think the Select Board's a perfect place to kind of bring these issues to light, right? You know, I love the town meeting, you know, making that accessible for everyone. You know, that directly falls under the select board, right? So they should look at that closely. In general, it's, it's going to be approached with how can we reasonably add these things that to make it easier for everyone? Because I love the point someone made around economic development, right? Business owners are going to want people being able to access their businesses. That benefits everyone in town. So I certainly commit to looking closely at it. And I think as a select board member, that would be a great opportunity to work together.
Would any other candidate like to address this question? From the school committee?
Thank you for bringing
Jamie?
this up. This is a really important issue to me as an occupational therapist, as a mother of a disabled child, something that I have been doing for the last year and a half. I've also been on an alternate on the Upper Charles Trail Committee, something that I've been pushing in all of our meetings and discussions about how we're building a trail, where we're building a trail, is one that's safe for neurodiverse children. Children with neurodiversity tend to flee when there's unexpected noises or loud noises. It can be extremely stressful to walk a child who might jump at a loud noise and jump into the street. And so investigating things like safe trails that are accessible for wagons, for wheelchairs, for walkers, that are enclosed in a safe area through a wood, but walkable, not tripping over roots and stumps, is something that I think is really important for Hopkinton and would really benefit anyone to be able to access the trails. All ages, all abilities. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that concludes the question and answer period. It's time now to offer candidates a final opportunity to address the audience with closing remarks. Once again, there's a 2-minute limit, and this time the order of speakers is reversed. So we'll start with the Cemetery Commission, if you'd like to speak or wave. Arlene Casassa. One of our own.
I'm Arlene Casassa. I'd just like to thank the Women's Club because I just want to tell you that I love going to our meetings and and that this is kind of a segue into how I came here tonight and was just not thinking I was going to be up here talking this much. So thank you, ladies. And my one thing that I have to say, and all of us recognize, is that change is totally inevitable. And I've had many changes in my personal and professional life throughout my years in Hopkinton and my years before Hopkinton when I was in another part of the country. I think I'm very encouraged tonight by all the volunteers and all the good things that I've had to listen to. I just want to adopt an idea, which I just recently heard on TV, about becoming a futurist, about how we have to kind of take into consideration, communicate other people's ideas, take the time to listen, and to adopt those ideas into another futuristic type of thing that will work out for the solutions that we have here with the problems in our town. I've seen many great solutions happen throughout the years in schools and, in just the general town. So I just like to say that not just in the cemetery areas, I did learn, in fact, about a few things there as well in my research and my for this position, but I just like to say that I think it's a great town and that I do hope you have give me your support, Cemetery Commissioner.
Thank you. Board of Health, the 3-year position with one opening, Mary Jo Andrenkin.
Andrekin, yes.
I said it right once.
Yes.
I'm a little tired now.
Very good. Okay. Thank you to all the participants. And to follow up on the futuristic view, climate action and getting to net zero is a health and safety issue. Our young people here will live to see far worse consequences than I will. We need to take action. My wife and I live in an all-electric home. We went the heat pump way, and it is wonderful. Heat pumps work fine. We are nice and warm in the winter. We're air-conditioned in the summer, and the humidity levels are modulated, so nice and even and comfortable. So we're more comfortable now than we were with the old oil system. The technology is here to go all electric in single-family homes if you get the right installer and buy the right kind of heat pump. If you don't get a cold climate heat pump, it's not going to work. But if you buy the right kind, it's the way to go. and I am all for the issue on the warrant. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mary Jo Andrican, please vote for me on May 20th.
And for Planning Board, for the one-year position, Karen Willis.
Thank you, and you kicked it off with your futuristic comment. Now look what you started. But thank you so much for inviting me to participate here, and thank you all for enduring the several hours of this, but it's been very enlightening. I think while we do need to look to the future, we don't want to leave the good things of the past, in the dust. And I think in terms of one of the comments earlier, we, and coming from my perspective in business, we need to look at who our audience is. And our audience are the people that are getting older in the town. Our audience are all the children. Our audience are the young families, are the ones that are growing older. So, and each one has different needs. And I think those are the things that we need to kind of take a look at and address to make sure that we are accommodating all of our citizens of Hopkinton. So, as well as looking towards the future. So, thank you so much, and I look forward to you guys voting for me on May 20th.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Commission for the 1 year, one opening, Kyle Smith.
Thanks. Felt a little left out, but
You can moderate next year.
okay, yeah, thanks. That'd be great. So while I can appreciate the select board stance on the current budget situation, what I would say is, while I don't necessarily want a 70% increase in property taxes, I'm still going to come hustle you for money for Parks and Rec, and continue to invest in the resources that the town has available. So thanks. Vote for me, Kyle Smith.
Thank you. Board of Assessors, the 3-year position with one opening, Leslie Ficari, the incumbent.
Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your insights and your questions for all of us here. I would like to say that I've lived in Hopkinton since 2001, and some of the same issues that we're talking about today have been here the whole time that I've been in Hopkinton, and we try and do our best, and people who serve on committees and on boards really give their heart and soul to the community, and so that's really what makes it special. I would like to continue on the Board of Assessors and finish out, oh boy, that could be 3 more years, would be 10 years, then I would be doing it. But I respectfully ask for your vote on May 20th, and thank you very much.
Thank you. School Committee, the 3-year position, where you vote for 2, we have Jamie Ronca.
Thanks to everyone for coming tonight. I really appreciate all the time that you've spent here listening to us and asking us questions. I look forward to serving on school committee.
Thank you. Select Board, Peter Mimo, for the last time.
Thank you again for this event, and thank you. We have an opportunity in this town to really sort of take on additional challenges, and I think that if we work together, and I think we have the opportunity to work together. We have an opportunity to take that temperature down and work together, and I think we have an opportunity to meet all those challenges. We can build out these new schools. We can provide needed relief to seniors if we work together civilly, and I think that I can offer that. I think that I can offer that as a seasoned attorney. I've often worked in contentious and dispute-driven tasks. That's what I do as a litigator. But the most effective way to bring down the temperature and the most effective way to work together and get something done is to find those common ground, and to find that common ground and find what brings us together and work towards that goal. Try to put aside the differences if we can, and I think we can do that together. I think that I can offer that as a candidate, and I do respectfully ask for your vote on May the 20th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kyla McSweeney.
I'd like to bring a few themes to our evening. First theme is that I believe residents have a voice in town and they need to be listened to. Another theme is that I don't purport to have all the answers to all the hard problems in Hopkinton. There's a lot of different areas that need to be explored, and there are a lot of people who are experts in that areas, and I pledge to work hard to listen to them and to do research so that we're finding competent solutions and really leveraging the professionals in town. I am excited to do that work. I'm excited to have the opportunity to serve if you are willing to vote for me. I will do my best to listen to all your concerns and bring them forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Herr?
This has been a great night. Really feel really good about the future of Hopkinton. Spending some time with you folks here tonight and listening to the other candidates for the select board and all the other offices, frankly, talk about their ideas. Thanks for a great evening to the Women's Club. Thank you for putting it together. Great job, Kathy, as always. The timing, folks, I think really kicked butt here tonight. You guys did a great job. You kept us on point, and the bell only went off, I think, one time, which is highly unusual in this situation, so well done. I think that the voters of Hopkinton for the select board have 4 great candidates before them. I think all the candidates did an excellent job tonight articulating their views for the future. I think all the candidates tonight demonstrated their passion for doing the right thing on behalf of Hopkinton. And I think all the candidates did a really nice job articulating the things that they would do maybe a little bit different to help reset and refocus our community and go forward together. So I think we have great choices in front of us. I happen to be one of the choices that has the experience. If that is of value to you, then I would appreciate your vote on May 20th. If you want to go in a different direction, I get it, because I think we have some really great candidates here. And I'm really excited for the election, and I'm excited to see the new board and see what the new board can do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Joe Clark?
Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. This has been really great, interacting with everyone, hearing your questions. I think one of the themes that's been touched on in closing is, looking at the future while also keeping an eye on the past. That's what I represent. I represent multi-generational public service in this town, going back years. I've spent over 3 decades of my life here. If I'm lucky enough to be healthy, I plan to spend the next 5 decades doing so. So I am vested in the future of this town. I'm just getting my kids in the school system. I care deeply about the departments in this town, the people that work for it, the residents. So I ask for your support on May 20th. More importantly, with everything that we've talked about tonight and everything that's going on, even if you're not voting for me this year, I want to see a big turnout at the voting polls. Everyone in town cares about what's going on. We've heard a lot of stuff in the news, social media. Now is our time to kind of change that. So I expect, record turnout at the voting polls. Thank you again.
Thank you. On behalf of the Hopkinton Women's Club, I want to extend a special thank you to all the candidates who participated in this evening's program, and to all the home viewers for joining us tonight. I also want to acknowledge the HCAM TV staff and crew for making this broadcast possible. Their expertise and patience is especially invaluable to me. Additional thanks goes out to the Women Club committee members. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The 2 high school students, do you want to take a bow? Who volunteered. Now you have to run for something. And Connor Deegan, the town clerk. I hope this presentation was informative, and I encourage every registered voter to vote in our upcoming town election on May 20th. All Hopkinton precincts vote at the middle school between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. Absentee ballots are available at the town clerk's office. Thank you, everyone, and good night.